Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host today, Matt Flipovitz, and I am joined by my co-host who has changed shirts in the 7 minutes since we last recorded, Mr. Craig Fritz. Craig, hello, how are you?
I'm pretty displeased that you didn't pretend this was like a different day and we're all wearing like it's normal for me to not don a hat and wear a different shirt
Well,
45 minutes after our last recording.
I did give away the game by sharing that we were recording this on our linebacker preview back to back. And if you haven't listened to that yet, be sure to go back, take a look at that. We previewed a crazy talented Penn State linebacker room yesterday. And today, Craig, we're talking Penn State's corners. For a long time, maybe the Achilles heel of the Penn State defense was the Penn State secondary as a whole. And Terry Smith in year 10 has built this room up to become, in my opinion, one of the best cornerback rooms in the Big Ten. Craig, do you think it's fair to say Terry Smith has taken this unit to heights you did not think possible?
For as long as they were kind of, middle of the road, serviceable, you had that group with Grant Haley and Christian Campbell with some draft picks but guys that were kind of like fringe Sunday talent to having Kalen King and Joey Porter Jr. and Johnny Dixon, no fly zone, and we're flapping our wings.
Do you like that? Do you like the the flapping celebration? I think it's hilarious when defensive tackles do it.
Right, because they're beefy boys. But I don't think every unit needs to have its own celebration, but Penn State's really leaned into this one in particular. And they're really freaking good. They were ridiculous last year. So from that perspective, I am of the opinion you let them do whatever they want because they're game wreckers.
Yeah, and let's start off by recapping the room last year. So the alpha dog here was Joey Porter Jr., who went on to become a technical second-round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The streak of not having a Penn State defensive back drafted in the first round lives on for another year, but Joey Porter Jr. totaled 27 tackles and 11 pass breakups. Keep in mind he did miss some time with what I believe was officially announced as appendicitis. I almost said torn Achilles. Very different injuries. Both start with an A. But it was appendicitis. He did miss some time, had to miss the Rose Bowl. Did get back in there for a really modified reps against Michigan State on his senior day. I think really just to get in there one more time. Kalen King, I think, really emerged as one of the best corners in America. He finished the year with 30 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, and 18 pass breakups, which led Power 5. I think it was third in FBS behind one guy from Toledo and who played an extra game with Toledo playing in the MAC title game, and somebody from Middle Tennessee State. So in terms of high level major FBS football, it was Kalen King in a league of his own. The number 3 guy then was Johnny Dixon, South Carolina transfer, taking advantage of his COVID year, back for another year, but he totaled 23 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss. Weirdly, 3 sacks. He led the team in sacks for all of September. It was so weird. 2 picks himself, and then 10 pass breakups. And then you factor in Daquan Hardy out of the slot, 13 tackles, a half tackle for loss, and a half sack. He also had 1 pick and 4 pass breakups. You lose from this room Marquise Wilson, who had 20 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, and 2 pass breakups. And then Cam Miller, as a true freshman, burned his red shirt and totaled 5 tackles. So, Craig, what did you think of this room as a whole? I think this may have been Penn State's best defensive position last year. You can make a case it was safety, but I think this unit played as good a ball as anybody in the country last year.
They were honestly a joy to watch. I thought that they, took over some games, like the Rose Bowl, for example, in my opinion. Just anytime Utah started, before Cam Rising's injury, of course, but anytime Utah started to get a little bit of momentum, we're sorry for those listeners that can't see
our audio. For our audio fans,
flapping my wings. But you look at the total pass breakups. People dogged Joey Porter Jr. for not intercepting balls, but
You
the
can at me on
three,
this, Craig. I'm part of those people.
okay, so yes, he dropped a couple and it would have made some games perhaps be more comfortable than others. But passes defended between the two of them, they had 29, and then you had Johnny Dixon. Your top three cornerbacks defended 39 passes on the season. That's absurd.
I will say
And
one thing
then
I want to make sure, not that I'm defending my probably abysmal Joey Porter Jr. takes in the immediate aftermath of Purdue. Our friend Statso War Parker on Twitter did, I don't know how he kept track of it or how he charted this, but Penn State did lead the FBS ranks in dropped interceptions. So I'm not saying, my original Joey Porter Jr. take after Purdue was accurate, but I think the numbers did kind of back it up that this group, although it defended a ton of balls, the secondary as a whole did drop a lot of interceptable passes. Let's get in front of that a little bit.
and just for context is not the right word, but they did the same thing in 2021. If you remember, like the Illinois game,
Yep.
Tig dropped what probably would have been a pick six. I think they had 5 potential interceptions dropped in a game that they lost in 9 overtimes to, erase it from
Revenge
memory
tour
or whatever.
Revenge tour.
A couple of those go your way, and it's a non-factor. I have to say, I watched a clip of the Big Ten road trip to Penn State, and
Glowing reviews.
Glowing reviews, of course. I mean, this team is so talented, but Howard Griffith is interviewing Kalen King and goes back and says, "Tell me about this drill where Terry Smith takes a tennis ball and a tennis racket and just launches a tennis ball 100 feet into the air, and you have to go catch it." And Kalen says it is the hardest drill that they do because they're wearing their gloves, and they have to try to catch this tiny tennis ball coming down, affected by the wind and all these other things. But the point of it is to secure those. They're getting to a point, like Terry has created this drill with the goal of securing the interceptions when the ball is in the air, that they are going to fight for the ball and not just, let it fall to the turf. Obviously, pass breakups are huge because they're big, high risk reward plays that are being broken up by the secondary and setting the opposing offense back. But, even like 10% more interceptions would be a huge bell cow for the bell cow's not the right word, but would be a huge sea change for this defense to put the offense continually in good positions with a young quarterback to take a little bit of pressure off. So they were ridiculous, though. That's all I can say about 2022.
I'm fascinated by the fact that it felt like every game they got better. Kalen King's picks they all came, I believe, post Ohio State. So that's middle October or later. He had the pick against Indiana. He had the pick against Michigan State, and then he had the pick in the Rose Bowl. He found his stride once Joey Porter Jr. was out of the equation. Like, we make the point King had all these pass breakups because nobody tried Joey. And then once they had to start trying Kalen King, then he just started picking balls off.
Right.
It was a really cool thing to watch this group continue to get better. I think Daquan Hardy was a guy we were really excited to watch play in the chaos of Manny Diaz's defense. Let's be honest, he started a little slow. I think he really struggled to find his footing in that defense. But by the end of it, he was playing some pretty good football. I think he really figured out what his role was. Johnny Dixon, again, a guy who came into a crowded room as a transfer and worked his way up that depth chart and still produced. I'm excited to watch him go. But Craig, let's shift our focus now to this upcoming season. And I think this first guy deserves his own little chunk when we talk about this room. I thought the streak of no defensive back going into the first round was going to end with Joey. On the Dolphins being cheaters, it didn't. So we'll call it a wash. I think Kalen King's a first round pick. What do you think about this guy?
I mean, everything that the buzz, the mock drafts for 2023 come out the day after the 2022 draft ends, etc. It's ridiculous. But at the same time, you have the guy, the guy in Power 5 that led the nation in pass breakups, and who was right behind him last year was Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama, who is now in the NFL. So if you're looking at, if he has a repeat, there's the unchallenged champion 2 years in a row of one of the most productive cornerback in the country. He has the size. He's not a slight dude. He's not freakish. He doesn't have the freakish arm length that Joey Porter Jr. does. But the thing, like you mentioned, this keyed for me when you were talking about his increase in interceptions. It got to a point where it almost seemed like he was running the routes for the receivers. Like he was where the ball was going to end up being, and he knew where it was going better than the receivers did. And just like, you can't teach that type of positional awareness. And those, another thing that mentioned in that Howard Griffith interview that has stuck with me from when Coach Poindexter and Terry Smith were talking about why they like their DBs to play multiple sports, is Kalen said he played outfield in high school. He said, it's a lot easier to catch a ball coming down 100 miles an hour when you have like a baseball glove on. And this just made that drill more challenging. But those guys that play outfield in high school have such higher level of depth perception from the line of scrimmage to however many yards back that they're playing on the field, that they can understand what the wind can do to a ball, how the ball moves through the air. Like, you are more equipped just to put yourself in the right position to make those plays, whether they're interceptions or pass breakups or whatever, when you have those baseball chops of being a center fielder or a left fielder, when you're chasing balls down in the gap and understanding angles of attack and things like that. And so I think that really, you saw it played out, and it really benefited him. And it was enlightening, and kind of like, obviously that's what they look for when they're recruiting, DBs. They want people with multifaceted skill sets. It's not, can you run fast? Can you hit hard? Especially at this position, you're looking for some finer tuned skills to be able to go up and get the ball and track the ball, etc.
Tracking the ball, I think Kalen King is second to none on Penn State's roster, maybe in the Big Ten. I think he does a phenomenal job identifying where that ball is going to go and putting himself in the right position. And if he can't get there, he does a good job getting his hand on balls and swatting them away. But there were two plays for me last year that stood out as, this dude is a different level of cornerback. And one, I think a lot of us remember, but the first one I think is really forgotten. And it came against, I believe, Central Michigan, where Kalen King got beat on a slant. And he goes in there, and after the guy secures the catch, this is Central Michigan. They're coming off of the Auburn game. They're on top of the world. I can't even imagine what that must feel like to already have 2 road wins in September. And even after the slant works and Central Michigan's able to move the sticks, Kalen King forces a fumble and then recovers the fumble in the same play. He did not give up even after initially beat. And to be a corner, you have to be an absolute maniac. You have to be an absolute psychopath to play that position. You have to believe you are the best player on the field on every given play. Because if you don't, it's going to affect the way you go out there and the way you attack a ball and the way you attack a receiver. So to see him, even though he got beat, think that I can still make something happen on this play, and then to go out there and do it was a really impressive thing for me. Again, that's a pretty big forgotten play. It was pretty inconsequential, but I loved seeing that out of a guy who was a true sophomore at the time. And the second play, the swing route against Ohio State on, I believe, 3rd and 4, where who was ever trying to block him, I believe it might be Julian Fleming, has no shot. Emeka Egbuka gets blown up. King fights off anybody out there and brings him down behind the line of scrimmage. And for a guy to go out there and feel comfortable existing in that kind of space is very impressive. He read it well the whole way. That shows me he knows what he's watching when a play is developing in front of him. And that's what you want to see out of young corners. So this is a guy I just think is really cerebral. I think he understands what he has to do in a defense, and he has the mentality to go out there and to be great. And this team is really going to miss Joey Porter Jr. I think Joey Porter Jr. was a phenomenal talent and a guy who really developed at a realistic pace. Like, I think Porter redshirting, he sat behind Keaton Ellis and Marquise Wilson as a true freshman, same class, same position at the time. Look who ended up being in the NFL first. I think King, from the jump, was a guy who was going to go out there and make an impact, which means I think his ceiling as a college player can be just a little bit higher. And I'm so excited to watch him this fall. And Craig, you know what I hope happens while I'm watching him this fall?
What do you hope happens?
I hope I'm wearing t-shirts, crew necks, joggers, hoodies, maybe not all at the same time. Maybe I'll
Could get hot.
rotate, and a hat. But
Could get hot.
I could get hot, and I could have a hat. They have hats too. And of course, we are talking about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Both myself and Craig, because Craig's a cheater and changed his shirt in between episodes, are rocking Home Field Apparel
I'm
gear.
so ashamed.
They have been our podcast sponsor for over a year now, and they make some of the best collegiate apparel out there in the marketplace today. Again, crew necks, t-shirts, sweatshirts. I am so excited for the season to come around so I can rock my new home field gear. Our listeners can get 15% off their first order with promo code RLR23. They're an Indiana-based company here in the heart of Big Ten country. They have almost 30 items in their Penn State collection. They have been great partners to us. They love the Big Ten, even though the Big Ten is now a made-up conference with teams from everywhere. And they go out there and they make sure that everything that they put on a t-shirt, put on an article of clothing, that you understand the history behind it. And they have been great partners to us, and I cannot wait to continue to rock their gear this fall. Again, our listeners can get 15% off their first order with promo code RLR23. And Craig, where do you want to go next? I think there's two guys here that are very intriguing. So I think King is going to be definitely the guy on the outside. I think Johnny Dixon is definitely the other guy on the outside.
Right.
I think he's a guy who's going to really come into his own now. Let's stick there, actually. Let's just talk about Johnny Dixon. He's a guy, again, 5th year of college football, 3rd in the program, really stepped up and became an interesting piece for them in the sense that he got sacks a lot. Like, he was a very prolific pass rusher in key situations. The Purdue final drive of the game, Dixon puts him behind the sticks with a sack. The Ohio State game where Ohio State's threatening and for some reason Ryan Day doesn't kick the field goal. He tries to get a couple more yards, like 8 seconds to go. Dixon gets a sack, forces a CJ Stroud fumble. He's a guy who kept on making big plays, and I don't know who's going to fill that prowler package role that Jair Brown played, but with how much chaos Johnny Dixon has been able to create, he's a guy I think can really become a household name this fall.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you, like, early in the years against Purdue, maybe you were saying, okay, there's JPJ and Kalen King, and there's a drop off, and Johnny Dixon is the third corner, and he plays like a third corner, as it were. But by the end of the season, there was almost no substantial difference in the performance of the unit, whether Porter was playing and King was playing, or King was playing and Dixon was playing. And I mean, the kid worked his butt off, obviously, but that's a credit to Terry Smith just to be able to round out his room in a way that in season, a guy that has been here for a while, not a freshman, and in college football for a while, not a freshman, has played at this level for a long time, can get that much better in one season. I thought it was remarkable because when, again, watching the Rose Bowl, he was locked down. It was ridiculous. He played as well as, maybe not as well as Kalen King, but he played as well as you can expect a college corner to play in a marquee New Year's Six bowl game. And so I think, I'm not 100% sure if the role flexibility will remain in the Diaz defense, just because he is so now so critical as strictly a cornerback. Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't have necessarily 2 first rounders in the same room anymore. It's one and himself.
It's a really good point.
So maybe someone else needs to pick up that slack. But I am very much looking like it's a good problem to have with a very talented room for Manny Diaz and Terry Smith to figure out those packages, and definitely looking forward to seeing how they do that this year.
I'm curious if teams, because after what Joey Porter Jr. did against Purdue, teams were afraid to throw at him. I think he was that good in hindsight in that game. I wonder if early on a team makes a mistake and thinks that you can't throw at Kalen King, so you got to throw at Johnny Dixon. And Dixon makes people learn that's not an option for you in this defense either. And I'm excited to see how he responds to being the Kalen King role that he was last year. So I think he's up for I think he's going to answer the bell. I think he's an NFL player. I think he's a Sunday player. Probably late day 2, early day 3 pick is probably the ceiling, which is still perfectly, like, in the history of Penn State corners, like, that's
phenomenal. Yeah.
That's rarefied air. And the other outside guy, I think, who's going to be that third guy is Cam Miller. North Florida native, burned his red shirt playing mostly special teams, but did get a little bit of run. I'm so high on this guy because he more or less scared an all ACC corner in Storm Duck out of the program in about 4 months. And that's not a shot at Storm Duck. Like, he is towards the end of his eligibility. He has to go somewhere that guarantees playing time because he's got to try to get paid. Like, I don't want this to come across as a shot to Storm Duck. I just think Cam Miller is ready to take a pretty big step in year 2. I think it's going to come with growing pains, and that's fine. I think we can all acknowledge the fact that there's going to be maybe a bigger drop-off just because Cam Miller isn't as experienced as a third corner as Dixon was. But I think that's a guy who showed that he is willing to do any role asked of him because he really excelled on special teams. And I'm excited to see what the Cam Miller role evolves into as the year goes on.
Yeah, I agree completely. And again, as you said, no shot at Storm Duck, but when that news dropped, our immediate reaction, I feel like, was Cam Miller must be bawling out to make CB3 a question for Storm Duck. Like, it wasn't going to be his guaranteed position coming out of spring. And that is remarkable for a guy that got, as you said, pretty limited playing time other than special teams, and where he played phenomenally well, but only had, 5 tackles on the entire year. So it wasn't like he was in the mix at cornerback. Now, you say only 5 tackles in the year, but he's a kid that you recognized when the twos came in and you say, oh, that was a nice play, or whatever it may be, still was like noticeable, along with, I don't want to spoil the safety preview, but along with a guy like my favorite up and comer, KJ Winston, who will.
Are you joining me for safeties? Are you finishing?
I don't know, but whatever. I'm just saying he's going to.
Because you want to do special teams
Write
too.
It down. I do want to do special teams.
Oh man, Craig, it's going to be a week of you and me, buddy. No, that's a good point. And can we actually address this? I don't think you and I have ever talked about this. The way Franklin handles red shirts now. Going back to 2021, it was just 2 guys. It was Kalen King and it was Jalen Reed, guys who played a lot. Like, Cam Miller, I'm not saying didn't play a lot because he definitely had a role on special teams, but do you think the staff knew early on really what Cam Miller was going to be as a true corner here? I don't know. I think outside of like Amari Evans, Cam Miller was the one I was most surprised to see his red shirt burned. And I'm curious if maybe I'll get proven wrong that no, this was actually really valuable experience. And now he's playing at like fringe all Big Ten honorable mention level in that third role.
I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And it's people look at this like when Franklin set up the green light, yellow light, red light system, there's fluidity in it. It's not a static decision. And I think one thing that has increased the willingness to burn red shirts is the portal, because you have to get guys a bigger taste. The guys that are going to be special, even if they are not ready to be performers now, at these types of skill positions, whether it's wide out, cornerback, safety, running back, there are not players that are staying for 5 years generally that are super talented. You're either going to come up and hit a playing time wall where there's so much talent in front of you and you transfer out, or you can't cut it and you transfer out, or you leave early because you're really stinking good and the next level is where you're destined to be. So I think that the 4-game limit gives them so much more flexibility to make that determination, because they can go in and say, what is the progress from the first game you played to the 4th game you played? And maybe it's like the 7th game of the season is your 4th game that you've played in. And if that progress is in an upward trajectory rather than a linear trajectory, then you expect, as a coach who is developing these guys, you expect that trajectory to continue and not plateau. So you might as well get them more playing time so that the trajectory continues the next year on the same, upward scale and doesn't level off. And so, like, I think Cam Miller, KJ Winston, Jalen Reed earlier, like, these are the types of players that this decision paradigm works for. They're not linemen. They're not, when you have some benchmarks that say we need you to be X weight, X strength, understand, all the different moving parts of the line. They can
There's
come in and
depth
make
there
an
to protect
immediate
them.
impact. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. I see what you're saying. I like that. Speaking of depth, Craig, this is Nick's favorite player, I think, on the roster. It's up there, I think, at least for Nick, and it's Daquan Hardy. I have a soft spot for Daquan Hardy because I love it when a 3-star finds a way to make an impact, especially as, like, Daquan Hardy wasn't a high-ranked 3-star. I think he was MAC bound before Penn State came in at the 11th hour and gave him a committable offer. And we've seen these guys at the lower end of classes be really productive. Robert Windsor in 2015 was the lowest rated recruit in that class. He got drafted. Journey Brown, very lowly rated recruit in Western Pennsylvania. He was Journey Brown. I think Daquan Hardy impressed me by how early he got on the field. I think the Pride defense, he had certain packages designed to really be beneficial to him. And again, he did struggle, I think, in year one in the Diaz defense, but I'm really rooting hard for this guy to make an impact because he's listed, I think, at like 5'9". I don't think he's 5'9". Like, I think that this is probably the highest level of football he's going to be able to play just by nature of his size. And I want to see him go out there and make an impact in what probably is he is his COVID year, but in what is probably going to be his final year of college football. And if that's this chaos player who can make plays behind the line of scrimmage, that's an awesome, awesome role to have. And I guess, Craig, what kind of role do you expect for Daquan Hardy, probably your likely starter in the slot?
Yeah, I think that this is, from a prognostication point, a little bit of a tough spot because you've seen the success with him being this jack of all trades, whether he's rushing the passer or whatever. If he's just a straight coverage guy, I'm not exactly sure how that holds up because there are some pretty excellent receivers in this conference, but also, I mean, I think he has the wherewithal and hopefully development in the second year of this defense to stick at that position because it gives them, and again, this is why you hate to lose Storm Duck, it gives them a lot more flexibility if you can not have to worry about Daquan Hardy.
Yeah, I'm aligned with that. I think that I really do wonder if his confidence got rattled. I mean, that Purdue game was lightning in a bottle. That was just Sunday players all over the field. Charlie Jones was drafted by the Bengals, I believe. Aiden O'Connell was drafted. Payne Durham is off somewhere, and he got better. I want to make sure I note that he did get better, and I really don't know what to expect of him. So we'll kind of move on because I don't think I can give an informed analysis over what Daquan Hardy can be in year 5. I hope it's more like what we saw from him in year 3 than it was year 4. I hope it's chaos plays, creating havoc, picking balls off when they come his way and making big plays. And if you want to call him the fourth corner, I think the slot kind of exists in a separate realm than like the outside corners. So there's a couple newcomers here. I think Elliott Washington, the early enrollee from Florida, is probably corner number 4. I think if Cam Miller burned his red shirt, I think Elliott Washington's going to burn his red shirt just because you are likely losing Daquan Hardy, Kalen King, and Johnny Dixon next year. Like, Dixon's out of eligibility. King's probably going pro. And again, Hardy is the COVID year. Outside of that, you also brought in Zion Tracy, who I know had a good spring but was hurt, and they like him a lot. Maybe a redshirt guy. Lamont Payne from Western PA comes into the room as well. Probably a redshirt guy. And then Adavian Collins, who had his redshirt last year at Mississippi State, so he can play every game this year and not lose a year of eligibility. Probably special team guy. If he gets some late reps, that's great. Craig, anybody from this group of newcomers that you're looking at, are you in the same boat as me as probably just by nature of his size? He played in Florida, early enrollee. It's probably Elliott Washington as number 4 outside corner.
I agree. Like his recruiting pedigree was very impressive. A lot of the SEC, a lot of the Big Ten, a lot of Power 5 schools. in there. And so almost by default, I kind of think that you expect that's who will be cornerback 4.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hope that there is an opportunity for him to play a lot early just to get his feet wet in the college football season. And you go from there. That's why I like the redshirt rule, because let's say for some reason Drew Aller throws 5 touchdowns in the first half against West Virginia, then Elliot Washington can play 2 quarters of football with a team that is going to be throwing a ton. And just, if he gets beat, so what? Like learning on the fly. So I'm hopeful that there are some opportunities early on, because I think that confidence, whether it be mistakes on tape that they can correct in practice or really good plays in real-time game action, can do nothing but help set the table for the rest of his career, and maybe even the rest of 2023. They need 4 corners, even
4
in a
outside
healthy
corners.
room. Yeah, even in a healthy room, that's how many guys are gonna. They can't just 3 guys cannot take the entirety of the season's reps. So I think he's gonna basically, you're in a position where he's gonna have to burn a red shirt and play more than 4 games.
Which is fine. I think it's just building up that depth for 2024. But that's a different podcast, which is roughly 11 and a half months away. Craig, we'll end it the same way we ended our linebacker room. Give me your pick for breakout guy in the Penn State cornerback room.
I'll go with Cam Miller, just because.
Ooh, okay. I like it.
I think that Dixon, obviously Kalen King is looking at a first round NFL grade. I think Johnny Dixon has become a known, trustable quantity. I think Cam Miller has the potential to be the next freak in this room. And so I think he's going to have a year. We talked about linebackers yesterday, when people look back and say, wow, that didn't come out of nowhere, but he's going to have that kind of season where, like, it's a good thing that guy was on the field as much as he was making plays.
For me, that's a great pick. I was thinking him, but I'm going to go Johnny Dixon, just because I feel like a lot of like the national podcasts I listen to, I consume a lot of college football, content. I like it. It's a passion of mine. I think a lot of the questions around this team are, the wide receivers on offense, and then defensively, it's defensive tackles, and then how are they going to replace Joey Porter Jr.? And I guess I'm not really worried about Johnny Dixon filling that role, but from a national perspective, you see Joey Porter Jr., first round pick and everything but name. The Dolphins are cheaters, never forget that. And I understand where you're coming from, but if Dixon can go out there and perform on even like 5% less, I'm sorry, that's a horrible way to word that. Even if he's like 5% worse than Kalen King, that's still an elite corner. Even if he's 15% less than Kalen King, that's still a really good corner. So that's what I'm going to quantify the breakout, in the sense that I don't think nationally people really know who Johnny Dixon is. And I think we're really going to see that athleticism that let him be a good pass rusher, that let him make tackles in the open field, really apply now to coverage. He's got to clean up some things penalty-wise. He got called for a couple too many for my liking. But overall, I think this is a guy who is going to go out there and make a lot of plays. Probably lead the team in picks, just because I think they're going to be afraid to throw to Kalen. So if I had to plant my flag there, or at least lead the corners in picks, I'm going to plant my flag on the Johnny Dixon.
Based on the amount of opportunity than anything else.
Yeah, totally. So that's my pick there. And Craig, we'll end it the same way we did linebackers. Ooh. The 2023 Penn State cornerbacks, better or worse than 2022?
Man, it is tough to say that you're going to be better when you lose. I'm going to.
Oh, you're torn.
No, I'm going to cheat. Not cheat. I'm going to cop out. I'm going to say.
You're going to push? Oh, you coward.
Yeah, I'm going
You
push.
absolute coward.
Changing shirts in between podcasts and pushing on the cornerback to cornerback. Okay.
Untrustworthy. After 7 years of content together, Craig, this is what I get?
Okay. I'll give you something.
Okay.
Kalen King will have a better year than Joey Porter Jr.
Okay.
And be a top 20 pick in the NFL draft.
Okay.
Johnny Dixon will have a year that he will get a 2-3 round grade, and he will decide to go to the NFL as well. And so they will have a better overall year. I don't know how that's possible. They'll have a better overall year because Penn State will be better overall than it was last year.
I'm with you on that. I think this is going to be, I don't know if better is the better word. I think it's going to be a more productive unit. I think they're going to pick off more balls. I think they're going to hold teams in check. I think we can't really, we made it this far, but we haven't mentioned the pass rush yet. But I think we're going to see a big improvement in that pass rush, especially just from the edge rushers on its own. Like, I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, Denai Dennis Sutton, it was all of their really first times in a long time being hand the dirt edge rushers because of the Achilles injury. Chop was a 3-4 outside linebacker, and Sutton was a true freshman. So now your top three guys have a year in under their belt where they can be more productive without bringing linebackers. And I think with all the chaos that's going to create, the corners are going to be the ones to benefit the most. I think no quarterback is dumb enough to throw a duck in the open field, like middle of the field. Quarterbacks are dumb enough to throw it to the sideline where the sideline is their friend. And that's where I think the corners are really going to benefit. So I'm going to say they're going to be just a little bit better, but I think their stats are going to look a lot better. I think you're going to see a lot more picks. I think you're going to see a lot more tackles for loss, and I think you're going to see more guys get their hands on footballs. So that's where I'm going to end things here, Craig. Craig, any final thoughts as we get over the hump? Today is Wednesday when we release this episode. We are another day down, another day closer to football. Any final thoughts on this Penn State cornerback room?
I mean, hats off to Terry Smith, man. He has found a system of identifying talent and developing it. And he's, we didn't even mention, did we mention he's the coach, the only last coach that's been with Franklin since he was hired at Penn State. And he's become an institution here. And I think it's awesome that he can have this type of impact at his alma mater. And the room is just so fun to watch.
Yeah, he's just done a phenomenal job. I think you are what a position room takes on the embodiment of their coach. And when you're ingrained in one position room for 10 years, which is like unheard of in modern college football, I think we're really seeing that room embrace that Terry Smith personality. And they're flying around, they're having fun, they're doing the no-fly zone stuff. And I just think it's a unit that's going to thrive in year 2 under Manny Diaz. And I cannot wait to watch him get out there. So season's coming up quick. They did not get a pick against, is this correct? Yeah, they didn't get a pick against Purdue last year in the opener. Does this unit get a pick in the opener against West Virginia?
100%.
All right, you heard it here first. Craig is telling you that the Penn State cornerback will register a pick against West Virginia in week 1, which is about 17 days away as we drop this episode. Craig, thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to go back and, not you, Craig, this is now for the audience, but Craig, thank you for joining me. But audience, be sure to go back and listen to our slew of preview pods from last week where we did the entire offense. So far this week, we have done defensive line. We did linebackers yesterday. Today was corners. Tomorrow will be safeties. And then Friday will be Craig's favorite special teams. Be sure to tune into that where Craig will talk 45 minutes about how to properly down a punt inside the 3. I've seen his PowerPoint on it. It's wildly impressive. It'll blow you away.
Slides on slides, baby.
Thank you, as always, to our partners at Home Field Apparel for sponsoring this podcast. Again, that's promo code RLR23 for 15% off your first order. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Leave a comment if you're watching us on YouTube. We love to interact. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're really trying to grow big things here as the season draws closer. You can follow us over on, I think I'm still going to call it Twitter because why not, over at RLR Blog. We're also on Threads, but I've never posted on there because I forget. And we are also on Blue Sky. So we are on all the social media networks under the sun except for Snapchat, even though I have to log in for that. But I think I forgot the password. Anyway, moving on. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. For my co-host, Mr. Craig Fritz, I'm Matt Lipovitz. Take care, everyone, and go State.
Go State.